Good afternoon and happy 4th of July. What a privilege, what an honor to reside in the United States of America on a day that we celebrate the United States of America, a place where freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, freedom to worship as we see fit has been ingrained in the national fabric since the beginning. Thank you, God, for this gift. Abraham Lincoln, we made a movie about Abraham Lincoln, Saving Lincoln. He believed with all his heart and soul that the American experiment in Republican democracy was a gift and a project not only on behalf of the citizens of the United States of America, but on behalf of the whole world. The United States of America is meant to be a light unto the nations, sharing a similar mission, as it were, to the Jewish people. Be a light unto the nations, show how it can work. One nation under God. And here we are. What's it, 2024? Wow, so we're 2 years away from the, what's that called? Bisesquicentennial, the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. How exciting. Let's light up the darkness. I can remember so vividly when I was a kid, and we had the bicentennial, the 200th birthday of America was such a big deal to all of us. The tall ships, the parades, the celebrations, in small town where I grew up in, where there was an annual parade. They actually did it on Memorial Day, not the 4th of July, but very patriotic, very grateful to be American, very thankful to everyone who made the ultimate sacrifice so that we could live in a free country. And that example that the United States has set has indeed, to some greater extent, some lesser, but replicated by so many nations around the world. I mean, before the United States, it was pretty much all monarchy, and now representative democracy, is pretty much the norm. Obviously not everywhere, and many democracies have work to do, including ours, but thank God that this example has shone so brightly. Who's in the house? Paul in the Great Northwest, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Bell. Happy 4th to all from Texas, Bella in Florida, Stephen in New Hampshire, Shandora in the Bronx, Melissa in Great Neck, Karen in Northern California, Jonathan in Ventura County, Sharon in New Jersey, Joe in the Inland Empire, Lucy in Minnesota, Marjorie in Georgia, Aoife in Florida, Chaim in Florida, Ilanit in Silver Spring. Guns N' Moses is coming to Florida. That we haven't announced the dates yet. Eventually, God willing, in a theater near you all across America when there's the commercial release of the movie. But we are doing Jewish film festivals, only Jewish film festivals, because I get to speak to audiences and, further the work of Accidental Talmudist. That's why Jewish film festivals are so interesting to me. So I won't make official announcements, but we just have booked at least 2 and probably several more coming in South Florida in January and February. Stay tuned for that. Okay. Our daf today is daf Tes, page 9 here in Tractate Bava Basra, the 23rd volume of the Talmud. Continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 4 here in chapter 1. The sages taught one does not calculate sums with charity collectors concerning the money they collected for charity to verify how much they received and how much they distributed. Nor does one calculate sums with the temple treasurers concerning the property consecrated to the temple. And even though there is no explicit proof of the matter from the Bible, there is nevertheless an allusion to the matter, as it is stated, 2 Kings 12:16, and they did not reckon with the men in whose hand they delivered the money to pay out the workmen, for they dealt in good faith. Obviously, this presupposes that you have people in your community that you have every reason in the world to have faith and trust that they are honest, God-fearing, law-abiding people, and who will collect and disperse the charity funds honorably. And so you don't have to look over their shoulder and make sure that they're, punctilious with every penny. You don't have to look over their shoulder because you've appointed people that will be punctilious with themselves. Rabbi Elazar says, even though a person has a trusted treasurer in his house, like the aforementioned temple treasurers who were fully trusted, he should nevertheless tie up his money and count it. As it is stated, and the king's scribe and the high priest came up and they tied it in bags and counted the money. And they gave the money that was counted into the hands of them that did the work, that had the oversight of the house of the Lord. Right? So the treasurers who were appointed by Solomon to build and later to rebuild the temple, they were utterly trusted people, and you didn't have to look carefully over their shoulder. Nevertheless, the king and his treasurers were careful with the treasures of the temple. And how do we reconcile this? The sages teach that you appoint people who are utterly trustworthy to collect and distribute charity. You don't have to look closely over their shoulder, but they are very meticulous with themselves and provide an accounting. They provide a financial report of how they are dispersing the money and what they are doing and what have they accomplished and what are they using the money for. They provide a report. And if there's any reason to have suspicion, to be suspect of these people, then you do calculate sums with them, then you do inspect. So it's not, that people who run nonprofits are utterly trusted and the corruption never happens. Sadly, we know that corruption happens in the world of nonprofits. So hopefully you appoint very trustworthy people and they provide an accounting. You don't demand it. They freely provide it because they're honest and they want it to show what they're doing, be very transparent. And then if you ever have reason to suspect, then the community jumps right in and examines the books, as it were. Continuing. Rav Huna says, charity collectors examine the level of poverty of one who asks for food, but they do not examine the level of poverty of one who asks for clothing. This is not the law. But the Gemara continues, if a person comes before the charity collectors in tattered clothes, he is given clothing without any questions being asked. And if you wish, say that this distinction is derived from a verse, and if you wish, say instead that it is derived by logical reasoning. If you wish, say that it is from a logical reasoning. So by logical reasoning, this one who stands before us in rags is exposed to contempt, whereas that one who is hungry, he is not exposed to contempt. Therefore, you might be more willing to say that you're hungry when you're not. And therefore, if somebody asks for food, we have to investigate a little bit. Are they really poor? Whereas nobody wants to be seen as, a destitute person walking around in tatters. Nobody wants to be seen that way. So if they do approach you, dressed in tatters, they really must be poor, and you don't have to do further examination. So you just give them the charity. That's the logical reasoning. In a moment, we'll see why we don't follow that reasoning. And if you wish, say that this distinction could be derived from a verse, as it is written, is it not to share, paros, your bread with the hungry? The word paros is written with a shin, alluding to the word parosh, meaning examine and investigate, like derush. And only then should you give him. And there in the same verse, it is written with regard to clothing, when you see the naked, that you cover him, indicating that when you see him, you should immediately cover him. But Rav Yehuda says the opposite of Rav Huna. Rav Yehuda says charity collectors examine the level of poverty of one who asks for clothing, but they do not examine the level of poverty of one who asks for food. He too adduces support for his opinion. If you wish, say that this distinction is derived by logical reasoning, and if you wish, say it's from a verse. If you wish, logical reasoning. This one who is hungry, he suffers. Whereas one who is in tattered clothing, he doesn't suffer in the same way. Okay, it's not pleasant to walk around in tattered clothing, but you're not in pain because of it. One who's having hunger pangs, he's suffering from hunger. He does not suffer in the same way. And if you wish, say it can be derived from a verse. Here it is written, is it not to share paros, your bread with the hungry, meaning share it immediately, just as the word is read. Since the word is read with a samik, not a shin, Rav Yehuda does not understand he doesn't understand it as alluding to examining the recipient. And there it is written, when you see the naked, that you cover him, meaning when it will be clearly apparent to you, when you see with your own eyes that he is naked. After you have investigated the matter and found that he is deserving, then you shall cover him. And the Gemara comments, it is taught in a Barais in accordance with the opinion of Rav Yehuda. If a poor person says, cover me with clothing, the charity collectors examine him. Is he really poor and needy? But if he said, give me food, sustain me with food, then they do not further investigate him. They give him food. And that is the law. We follow Rav Yehuda in this. However, there is a caveat that if a person comes and asks for clothing and he is known to the community that he is now poor and can't afford new clothing, then you don't have to examine him. You give him clothing. And here's what's really interesting. If a person was wealthy and then he became poor, and you know this about him, right? It's established. The whole community knows that he was rich, he became poor, and now he needs clothing. We not only give him clothing, we give him the kind of clothing that he was accustomed to wear when, during the rest of his life when he was well-to-do. You actually try to sustain people at the level that they're used to if it's possible. But that's only if you know them. So we follow Rav Yehuda. Okay, now we learned in a Mishna there, Peah 8:7, one does not give a poor person who is traveling from place to place requesting charity less than a loaf worth a pundayon, which is 1/48 of a sela, when the standard price of grain is at 4 sa for a sela. So if the poor person sleeps in that place, one gives him provisions for lodging. So the Gemara asks, what is meant by provisions for lodging? And Rav Papa said, a bed and a pillow. And if he spends Shabbos in that place, one gives him food for 3 meals. So Sage taught in Baraisa, if a poor person was going door to door asking for charity, one is not required to attend to him and give him money from the charity fund. Then we just say, if somebody is going around asking, going from place to place asking for charity, that we give him a loaf of bread, and it has to be a minimum size loaf. And if he needs lodging, we give him a bed and a pillow. And if it's for Shabbos, we give him 3 whole meals. And now why does it say that a poor person going from door to door, one is not required to attend to him and give him money from the charity fund? Why? What's this contradiction? So it is related that a certain poor person, who was going door to door requesting charity came before Rav Papa. And Rav Papa was the local charity collector in his locale. But Rav Papa did not attend to him, did not give him money. So Rav Sama, the son of Rav Yeva, said to Rav Papa, if the master does not attend to him, no one else will attend to him either. Should he be left to die of hunger? Now, is he saying, well, how can you assume that other people will attend to him? Maybe nobody will attend to him and he'll die of hunger. Or maybe it's even stronger that Rav Papa, if you don't give to him, everyone else will think that there's something wrong with him. The fact that you, who's like the main charity collector, didn't sustain this guy, will signal to everyone else that there's something fishy about him, and then no one will give him charity, and he'll die of hunger. Is that what you want, Rav Papa? Rav Papa said to him, but isn't it taught in a Baraisa? If a poor person was going door to door asking for charity, one is not required to attend to him. And Rav Sama said to him, the Baraisa means to say that one is not required to attend to him and give him a large gift, since he's already collecting money as he goes door to door. But one does attend to him and give him a small gift, right? Now that is a teaching that comes home a lot, right? If you're accustomed to giving to Jewish causes, and you've heard me talk so many times, everybody should have a Meiser account, right? A charity account, separate bank account. Money comes in, you calculate what your net income is as it arrives. You take 10% of it, put it in your charity account. And now you're a philanthropist. It doesn't have to be millions of dollars, but you have a charity account that's 10% of your income, and you are choosing the causes and the people to give that money away to. And you end up giving to a lot of different causes. And then they and all the other causes who hear about you show up. So you're constantly getting these requests, right? So Rav Papa was constantly getting requests. Now he can't honor them all. He can't give to everybody, So this one he didn't give to. But then somebody said, okay, but if you're visibly declined, give to somebody and you're the main charity guy, that's going to have a real hard impact on him. So especially you who are visible, charity philanthropist and disperser on behalf of the community, you have to be very careful who you give and don't give to. And even for all of us, let's not become so hardened by the constant stream of requests for our charity from so many different worthy organizations, especially now since October 7th. There's so many causes that require funding to do good work. It's better even if we give $5, $10, $15, $18 to a lot of these places than to give nothing, and then the ones that, we're more connected to and supportive of and, that more are pet causes, as it were, we can support in a bigger way. But, to give something small, before you say no to any organization, see if it's possible to say yes. Rav Asi says a person should never prevent himself from giving at least 1/3 of a shekel a year in charity, as it is stated, and we also established mitzvahs, plural, mitzvahs, upon ourselves to charge ourselves yearly with the 1/3 part of a shekel for the service of the house of God. So Nehemiah, right? So Nehemiah, when they came back, right, the returnees from the Babylonian exile, these are the people on the building the second temple. But this was not the same kind of environment like when, David HaMelech established the kingdom and his son Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, had so much wealth with which to build the first temple. This was a very reduced population who had suffered the destruction of the first temple, the Babylonian exile. There were, 10, 40, 50,000 returnees, a very small number of people to populate the land of Israel. Eventually, more and more came, and they reproduced, but it was very difficult for them, right? So they were really struggling to rebuild Israel and to rebuild the second temple, and they all had to chip in, and that's a little bit of what they're talking about here. A lot of people who were, very imbued and inspired with faith, and wanted to be there when the second temple was rebuilt. Some of them were well-to-do, some of them were middle class, and some were just very poor people who wanted to be there but had no way to feed themselves. So as much as they were all taxed with rebuilding the town, rebuilding the temple, they were also needing to take care of the destitute among them. Rava said, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Nehemiah. And Rav Asi says charity is equivalent to all the other mitzvahs combined. All the other mitzvahs combined. As it is stated in that verse, we also established mitzvahs upon ourselves. And a mitzvah, singular, is not written there, but rather mitzvahs. They're talking about we're going to give charity, we're going to give at least 1/3 of shekel to charity. That's a mitzvah, right? Why are they calling it mitzvahs? This is to teach you that the mitzvah of charity, of giving charity, is equivalent to all the other mitzvahs. Now again, that doesn't mean if you just give away a penny, you're off the hook for all the other mitzvahs. But charity is great, and if you perform it correctly, 10% of all your income to charity, then that goes a long way, right? When you are brought before the heavenly tribunal and examine what is your portion going to be in Olam Haba, in the next world, the fact that you were scrupulous about giving charity will be, a tremendous asset for you. Something you can take from this world to the next. What you gave away is what you can take with you. Where am I? Is equivalent to them all. And the Gemara offers a mnemonic device for the following statements extolling the mitzvah of charity. Greater temple Moses. So Rabbi Elazar says, one who causes others to perform, maaseh, to perform, a meritorious act is greater than the one who performs the act himself. As it is stated, and the causing, maaseh, of righteousness shall be peace, and the work of righteousness, quietness, and assurance forever. Isaiah 32:17, right? It is great to do a mitzvah. It is even greater to inspire someone else to perform a mitzvah. And if one merits, the following verses apply to him. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry? I.e., he will wholeheartedly give charity to the poor. If he does not merit, the latter clause of the verse applies to him. You shall bring the poor that are cast out to your house. I.e., he will be compelled by the government to billet, or billet, I don't know how to pronounce that word, billet, meaning to house soldiers in his house and sustain them against his will, right? So one who is not generous with hospitality, with charity, with taking care of the needy, with feeding them, with sustaining them, one who is not generous in this regard will end up being forced to give away his provisions, his shelter, his, the stuff that he didn't want to give freely. It will be taken from him. And one form of that will be that enemy troop or a friendly troop of soldiers will come through your town and make you sleep in your attic while 20 soldiers sleep in the various beds and rooms of your house. And then, you won't have a choice. And so if you're not, showing generosity and largesse from your own free will, it will end up being imposed on you. Rava said to the people of Mechoza, I beg of you, strive with each other to perform acts of charity and righteousness, so that you will live in peace with the government. Since if you do not act charitably toward each other, you will end up paying fines to the government. Is that interesting? If you can't get along with each other, you will end up having a government that exploits you. Pretty interesting. Right? If people can't get along with each other, respect each other's viewpoints, and constructively, forge solutions that work for the values that people share, even though they disagree about others, if they can't work together, they will end up having a government that is toxic to them. And Rabbi Lazar says, when the temple is standing, a person contributes his shekel for the temple service and achieves atonement for his sins. And now that the temple no longer stands, if people act charitably, it will be well for them. But if not, the nations of the world will come and take their money by force. Same concept. The Gemara comments, and even so the money is taken from them by force is credited to them as if they had freely given to charity, as it is stated, and I will make your oppressors charity. What he's saying, maybe, is that if you're not going to be generous with each other and sustain the needy among you, right, then your enemies will come in and defeat you and impoverish you, right? Now, at that point, being impoverished by your enemies will sort of help you out in the heavenly accounting, sort of weighing your deeds at the end of your life to see what your portion should be. Why? Because it will entail suffering, right? In other words, if you're not generous with each other, it will lead to national suffering. Okay, so then that suffering will help you out a little bit because you've already sort of paid some of the price for your misdeeds and omitted deeds, right? So some of that suffering will help you, but wouldn't it be better to treat each other with kindness, with respect, with charity, to give to each other, to sustain the needy among you, and not have it forced on you, and not have suffering forced on you by your enemies? Rava said, this following matter was told to me by the infant who perverted the ways of his mother. Who was the infant who perverted the ways of his mother? He said, in the name of Rabbi Elazar, what is the meaning of that which is written? And he donned charity like a coat of mail. We are on page 9b now. Isaiah 59:17. So this verse serves to tell you that just as with regard to this coat of mail, right, it was a coat of mail, armor, right, medieval armor, made of, rings of steel, hundreds or thousands of them that hopefully will deflect a sword or an arrow or a spear before it really harms you. So it's a coat of armor made of many little pieces. And so what he's saying is, the verse serves to tell you that just as with regard to this coat of mail, each and every scale of which it is fashioned combines to form one large coat of mail, so too with regard to charity, each and every peruta that you give away to the needy combines to form a great sum that protects you. Rabbi Hanina says the same idea is derived from here, as it is stated in all our charity is as a polluted garment, Isaiah 64:5. So just as with regard to this garment, each and every thread in it combines to form one large garment, so too with regard to charity, each and every peruta combines to form a great sum. Now the Gemara comments, why was this sage called the infant who perverted the ways of his mother? That's a very strange moniker for a great sage of Israel. The infant who perverted the ways of his mother. And it was because of the following incident. Rav Achadvoy Bar Ami asked Rav Sheshis, from where is it derived that a mitzvah, one who is stricken with saras, right, the physical expression of a spiritual malady, that a mitzvah renders a person impure through contact during his days of counting, i.e. the 7 days that the mitzvah must count from the start of his purification process, meaning after the tsaras has gone away, then he does a 7-day purification, and only then can he rejoin the congregation. So even though his skin has healed, the tsaras has gone away, he can still impart impurity, like when he was fully impure. But is it the same capacity to impart, to transmit impurity that he had when he was a full-blown mitzvah? That's what they were wondering about. So Rav Achad Bar Ami asked Rav Sheshis, from where is it derived that a mitzvah does render another person through contact during his days of counting? His skin is healed, but if he touches another person, he imparts impurity, and they're going to have to go through a purification. Not the full purification of a mitzvah, but they'll have to immerse in a mikvah, wait till nightfall before they could, come into contact with something that needs to be pure, like the teruma portion of the tithe that's given to a priest. So how do we know that the mitzvah, whose skin is cleared up, but is still in his days of counting, that he still imparts impurity? How do we know this? So Rav Sheshis said to him, since he renders his garments impure, as it states that on the 7th day of his purification, he must wash his clothes. Therefore, since he can impart impurity to clothing, it must also be that he can impart impurity to other people. And Rav Achadvoy said to him, why would you make that assumption? Perhaps connected impurity is different. Meaning the reason that he renders his garments impure is because those garments are connected to the source of impurity. But like his garments touched him, where he had the tsaras, and that's why they're impure. But that doesn't necessarily follow that once the skin has healed up, that if the mitzvah touches another individual, that he would transmit impurity. We don't know that. We can't make that assumption. We can't make that leap. But this does not mean that he renders a person impure when he touches. And a proof for making this distinction may be brought from the fact that if the mitzvah moves an animal carcass, that if a person moves an animal carcass, an action that renders him impure, even if there's no actual contact with the carcass, he also renders the garments that he is wearing impure, but he does not render another person impure. So, right there, in other words, it's not a whole class on Tuma right now, on receiving and transmitting impurity, but the point is there are different rules for different kinds of impurities, right? And in this case, the question of the mitzvah, whether just because he makes his garments impure, does he also make another person impure, the proof has been undermined, right? The proof that Rav Sheshis offered has now been undermined by Rav Achadvoy Bar Ami. So Rav Sheshis said to him, But from where do we derive that the carcass of a creeping animal renders a person impure? Is it not because we know that it renders his garments impure? And Rav Chadvoi said to him, it is written explicitly with regard to the carcass of a creeping animal, quote, or a man who touches any creeping animal whereby he be made unclean. Leviticus 22:5. So Rav Shesha said to him, but from where do we derive that semen renders a person impure? Is it not because we say that since it renders his garments impure in Leviticus 15:17, it also renders the person impure? And Rav Chadvoi said to him, no, you got this all wrong. It is also written explicitly with regard to semen, or a man from whom semen is expelled. And the sages expound the superfluous word or in that verse as serving to include as impure one who touches semen. In other words, the whole chain of logic that Rav Sheshes was using to make the distinction about when, use a proof as if you make garments impure, you also make people impure. This has been totally undermined by Rav Chadvoi's, the verses that he's brought down as a contradiction to Rav Sheshes' point of view. So the Gemara relates that with each of his answers that Rav Chadvoi answered to Rav Sheshes, he answered him in a mocking tone. Ooh. Bad idea. Maybe Rav Sheshes was wrong, but Rav Sheshes was a great, great sage. Maybe Rav Sheshes had forgotten his learning. Maybe Rav Sheshes had been thinking about something else. Maybe Rav Sheshes hadn't completed his research. So maybe he was wrong, but if you're going to correct a sage, you do it respectfully. What happened? Rav Chadvoi responded to Rav Sheshes in a mocking tone, intimating that he doubted Rav Sheshes' grasp of Torah verses. And Rav Sheshes was offended. And as a punishment, Rav Chadvoi bar Ami became mute, and he forgot his learning. There he is thinking, oh, the old guy's forgotten it all. He's not sharp like me, the young guy. And because he spoke in a mocking manner about his elder, he was stricken with a muteness and forgetting all his learning. Right? Kind of natural consequence of being disrespectful to an elder. Rav Chadvoi's mother came and wept before Rav Sheshes. She cried and cried, but he ignored her. Since she had once been Rav Sheshes' nursemaid, right? So Rav Sheshes wasn't so old. He just maybe wasn't so learned in this field. So it seems like Rav Sheshes was basically a contemporary of Rav Chadvoi. And Rav Chadvoi's mother, right, had also acted as a nursemaid to Rav Sheshes when he was young. And so now Rav Chadvoi's mother, who's desperate to have her son cured, goes to this more prominent sage, Rav Sheshes, in whose merit her son was struck mute, and says, please pray for mercy on behalf of my son. I'm sorry that he mocked you. He acknowledges that he was wrong, but he can't ask you to forgive him because he's mute now. So I'm asking you, pray for mercy on his behalf. And Rav Sheshes was so offended, he wasn't ready to forgive yet. So she cried and cried, but he ignored her. And because she had once been his nursemaid, she said to him, this is so strange. She said to him, look at these breasts of mine from which you suckled. Upon hearing that, Rav Sheshes prayed for mercy for Rav Chadvoi, and he was healed. And since it was Rav Chadvoi whose behavior led to his mother's acting in this manner, he, Rav Chadvoi, came to be referred to as the infant who perverted his mother's ways. I'm thinking that she did not bare her breasts and say, look at these breasts that suckled you, pray for my son. I mean, she's dealing with a sage. But I think even the fact that she pointed to herself in that way and said, look, I was your nursemaid. I'm not just some woman asking you. I suckled you. So, do it for me. Heal my son. And it was enough. But since she caused him, she pointed to herself and said, look at, that part of my anatomy, that was enough. Even that conversation was inappropriate It worked, but, it led to her son being called the infant who perverted the ways of his mother. The Gemara comments, with regard to that which we arrived at, i.e. this particular subject, let us clarify the matter. From where do we derive that a Metzora renders impure a person whom he comes into contact with during his days of counting? As it's taught in Baraisa that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, washing garments is stated with respect to his days of counting, and washing garments is stated with respect to his days of being a confirmed Metzora after he has been declared conclusively impure, tameh, by the Kohen, by the priest. So just as there, when he is a confirmed Metzora, he renders other people impure, as it is explicitly stated in the Torah, so too, here, during the days of his counting, he renders a person impure through contact. New subject. The Gemara resumes its discussion of the virtues of giving charity. Rabbi Lazar said, one who performs acts of charity in secret is greater than Moses, our teacher. Okay, that's hyperbolic. But hyperbolic for a reason, right? The greatest form of charity is one who gives it anonymously, and such a person who's not looking for glory for himself, but just to fulfill his obligation and to be a decent and good and God-fearing person who looks after his brethren and does it anonymously. This person is likened and is even metaphorically said to somehow exceed Moses, our teacher. As it is written, Deuteronomy 9:19, for I was afraid of the anger and the wrath. With regard to one who performs acts of charity, it is written, a gift in secret pacifies anger, and a present in the bosom fierce wrath. Right? So Moses was not able to allay all of the wrath of Hashem toward the Jewish people, but in Proverbs we learn that a gift in secret pacifies anger, and a present in the bosom, what does that mean? We're not sure yet, but a present in the bosom allays fierce wrath. So presumably a present in the bosom means a gift that you give and you keep it close to your chest, right? You do it anonymously. The Gemara comments, and this statement actually disagrees with a statement of Rabbi Yitzchak, as Rabbi Yitzchak says, a secret gift pacifies anger, but it does not pacify wrath, as it is stated, and a present in the bosom fierce wrath, meaning that although a present is in the bosom, i.e. even if one gives charity in secret, nevertheless fierce wrath can still harm him. And there are those who say that Rabbi Yitzchak says as follows, any judge who accepts a bribe brings fierce wrath upon the world, as it is stated, in a present in the bosom, fierce wrath. A present in the bosom could refer to a judge who takes a bribe. The other concept from Rabbi Yitzchak is, yes, giving charity in secret is a tremendous mitzvah, and it will provide a large amount of protection for you. But it won't protect you from everything, okay? Sometimes wrath comes into the world. The world population has so many problems in it, and things happen, and people get caught up in it. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, anyone who gives a peruta, a penny, the smallest coin, to a poor person receives 6 blessings. And whoever consoles a poor person with words of comfort and encouragement receives 11 blessings. Right? So it's 6 blessings come your way if you give charity, even a small amount, and 11 blessings come your way if you take the time to inquire of a poor person. Hey, what's going on, brother? I see you're collecting. Why are you collecting? Are you hurting? What's it all about? I mean, so often there's a bunch of guys coming, they're collecting, you're in a hurry, you want to get in, get out, get home. You'll give money, but you don't want to hear the whole story. Okay, well, now we're hearing the story, offering words of consolation. You have to set boundaries. You have to set boundaries. But giving a little extra time to the guy who's collecting, 11 blessings, it's a lot. How do we know this? The Gemara explains, one who gives a peruta to a poor person receives 6 blessings, as it is written, is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and that you shall bring the poor that are cast out to your house? When you see the naked, that you cover him. This is Isaiah 58:7. And the next verse lists 6 blessings. Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your health shall spring forth speedily, and your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your safeguard. Then shall you call, and the Lord shall answer. You shall cry, and he, the Lord, shall say, Hineni, here I am, here I am. And whoever consoles a poor person with words of comfort and encouragement receives 11 blessings, as it is stated from Isaiah 58, 10 through 12. And if you draw out your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, if you draw out your soul, right, that's more than giving money. You're giving sustenance, but you're drawing out your soul. That means you're making a soul connection with the person who comes to collect from you. And whoever consoles a poor person with words of comfort, if you draw out your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall your light shine in darkness, and your gloom shall be as the noonday. And the Lord shall guide you continually and satisfy your thirst and drought, and they shall be of you, and they that shall be of you shall build the old waste places. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. So that's an additional 5 blessings on top of the 6th that we already named for one who gives even a penny to the poor. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of that which is written? He who pursues charity and mercy builds life, charity, and honor. Proverb 21:21. Is this to say that because one has pursued charity, he himself shall find charity? Right? The verse from Proverbs. He who pursues charity and mercy finds life, charity, and honor. Okay, so one who gives charity finds life and honor. Okay, his life is extended and he's honored. Okay, we get it. But why finds charity? Are we saying that somebody who gives a lot of charity will end up impoverished and needing charity and then people will give it to him? That doesn't sound like such a great reward for giving a lot of charity. Rather, the verse serves to tell you that with regard to anyone who pursues charity, meaning giving charity and leading others to give charity, so too the Holy One, blessed be He, furnishes him with money with which to perform acts of charity. You want to get wealthier? Give away a lot of money to charity. I am almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, the Holy One, blessed be He, sends him people who are deserving of charity so that he will reap his just reward for helping them. And the Gemara, right, so he'll be given the means to give charity and he'll be given the opportunities to give charity. These are gifts, blessings to one who gives charity. The fact that more people come to you is a gift to you. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, the Holy One, blessed be He, sends him people who are deserving of charity so that he will reap his just reward for helping them. The Gemara comments, what does this statement serve to exclude? It serves to exclude Rabbah's homiletical interpretation of a different verse. As Rabbah taught, what is the meaning of that which is written? Let them be made to stumble before you. Deal thus with them in the time of your anger. Jeremiah 18:23. The prophet Jeremiah said before the Holy One, blessed be He, Master of the universe, even when those wicked men who pursued me subdue their inclinations and seek to perform acts of charity before you, cause them to stumble upon the dishonest people who are not deserving of charity, so that they will not receive reward for coming to their assistance. Right? People who, and again, there's so much natural consequences in this, right? So people who were stingy, who never gave to charity, and they always had a reason and an excuse and their suspicions of who's coming after them. And so lots of needy people came their way and they said no for years. And then late in life, they're starting to consider their mortality. And they start to think, boy, when I come before the heavenly tribunal, there is such a thing. Maybe this person is only starting to consider that might be true. And now he thinks to himself, oh my gosh, it might be true. And then when I come before that heavenly tribunal, I will have no acts of charity to offer, right? I'll have no evidence in my behalf to advocate for me that I should have a place in the world to come. So they start to get panicked, and near the end of their life, now they want to pile up a bunch of mitzvahs, but it's too late. They said no so many times. They turned away the needy so many times that now when they're in a hurry to give away, it might well happen that unscrupulous people take advantage of them and they end up giving their money away to thieves, not to the needy. And so they don't get that merit. They never get the merit of giving to the poor because they spurned that opportunity so many times earlier in life. Right? Now, that's not to say that it's ever too late to make a teshuvah, to make an atonement, to turn your life around. But when you do, make sure it's sincere. And when you're ready to start giving away, be careful, right? Be careful. Examine the organizations that you're giving to. Make sure that they're reputable and that your money will be actually used to do the good that you intend, and not just to create some honor for you and a quick fix and, to fund a charity that, might be glitzy but isn't really good. Okay, a couple of questions. Sharon, I was so painfully reminded of the last letters from my dad's brother and uncle asking for money to help them in Poland and Austria in 1939, as they had neither clothing nor food. It was beyond heartbreaking to read these letters. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Why do we break a glass at a wedding, right? In the time of our greatest joy, to remember our sorrows. Now, obviously, the big sorrow most closely associated with the breaking of the glass at a wedding is the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago. But that glass stands in for so many other sorrows. And we need to remember our sorrows when we're on top of it all, to keep us generous at that time. And we hope that, if that wheel turns and we end up being in that position where we need the help of others, that they'll remember that they have been in sorrow, and that everyone, needs sometimes, and to be generous. Tom is helping me out. That word for housing soldiers, billet. Billet. I guess that's how we say it in English, billet, to billet them. Sharon, is this idea of getting along derived, in part at least, from the idea of the destruction of Jerusalem being due to sinas chinam? Exactly, baseless hatred. The first temple was destroyed because of the big sins, murder, sexual impropriety, and idolatry, that the nation had fallen so low that they were committing those sins. The second temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred, right? That the Jews could not get along with each other. The worst enemies of the Jews were the Jews. How often do we see that repeated in our history? We're very opinionated people, people that has learned to argue, buttressed and strengthened by Talmudic reasoning skills. But when we apply that in the service not of God, but of some other values that sometimes are sadly godless, and we're said, or even sometimes when people are trying to be godly and they just can't agree on how to do it, and unity falls by the wayside, of course, we become vulnerable to our enemies. Marjorie, Atlanta's Jewish Film Festival is February 2025, and it's just up the road from Florida. Hint, hint. It is the 25th anniversary of the event. I believe our daughter has attended 23 of them. Spoiler alert, we are in conversation with them, and hopefully that will work out. And Ilanit, wasn't Rav Sheshes the one who was blind? As so, he really didn't see anything. And the text says, when he heard. Perhaps that's another clue that it says when he heard rather than when he saw. Thank you, Ilanit. I had forgotten that. And of course, that certainly adds color and texture to this conversation, particularly because, Rav Sheshes, if he's blind, he's going to be that much more sensitive to tone and nuance in the way somebody else is relating to him. And maybe Rav Hadvoy wasn't meaning to be as mocking as he sounded, because he was giving visual cues that maybe contradicted that mockery. Maybe his voice just sounded mocking when it wasn't, but maybe he didn't realize that Rav Sheshes wasn't seeing him. I don't know. I'm just speculating. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, see you again tomorrow. Wait, there was one more question. Jonathan, charity, I'm not so sure. I think that even more requires us to ignore the common thought, not to give money to not to give money to people directly. I give and let God decide how to spend. The act of kindness weighs more. I'm not sure actually where that question was coming from. what you were answering, which part of the discussion with that comment. Ignore the comment thought not to give money to people directly. I mean, I guess maybe you're saying that like sometimes there's like people say, oh, I don't give to homeless people, because they're drug addicts, and I'd rather give to some organization that I trust. And I would say, you have reasons to examine in that way. But when somebody walks up to you and asks for money, they probably need that $1 more than you, probably, right? And they've given you the opportunity to perform tzedakah that you wouldn't have otherwise had. So I don't give every time there's a person at an intersection with the cup. But if I've got the singles, or sometimes there's like a bigger bill and I don't have the single, I'm like, oh, I'll give it. It's never the wrong thing to do. It's just never the wrong thing to do. I think Jonathan and I are on the same page. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, see you tomorrow, Friday, regular Friday time, noon Pacific. Have a great day. Happy 4th of July.